It's again a Yamantaka one. And this is without all the ornamentation and the texturing. Just gives you the basic idea. You go in the gate. In there is a thing with petals. It's a different kind of thing. Then you see the rafters. And so when you learn to do this kind of creation stage practice, you learn actually those beams are made of emerald or ruby, solid ruby or emerald or diamond, the white color is. It's all jewel plasma shaped like this, like jewel plexiglass, let's call it. And this is the sort of wall structure. That's the ventilation thing in the tropical area palace. And the things, it's a very partial, but it just gives you an idea of how you rise from this, you see, how this actually is a three-dimensional thing, and I just couldn't find it just now. There's one like this for the Kala Chakra, but I couldn't find. And, you know, the Kala Chakra is kind of a skyscraper, this central palace in the Kala Chakra, and within the central palace there's a little tower where Kala Chakra and the 8 Shaktis are, which is a kind of little tower within the central building. And it's a really beautiful, it's an extraordinary thing, and all made of jewels. And these outer rows there are 88 mantra letters there, and each of those mantra letters is the seed syllable of a deity. And in those deities, in those 88 things include, you know, the 27 lunar mansions, the 12 zodiac signs, all people like Vishnu and Shiva, etc. Another form of them are out there, and the days of the week, days of the month, and so on. So there are all these like deities that constitute sort of ordinary time. That's the equivalent of the charnel grounds that are outside the realm of the mandala. And this is although they're depicted here on the wind circle, the dark-colored circle there. Outside is the wind circle, you see. And then there's a water circle and a fire circle, and as you go inward, you know, and like that. And then these are blazing flames outside your universe, so no negative things can come into your universe when you're Kala Chakra. And it has a Vajra force field. Those yellow things you see there are a Vajra force field, which is spherical. And the flames that are shooting out of multicolored flames are also spherical, you know, although it's here as a flat circle. And then these buildings, and those things that are lying flat coming out like that, those are actually gatehouses, 3-storied gatehouses that come up over the gates. But that's how it's drawn. And the little floral things you see out there, those are eave ornaments hanging from the eaves of the upper building. And so it's like a blueprint of the building which they understand. And the way they make it is marvelous in the ritual, the monks. As you know, you've probably all seen them where they have this like wedding cake ornamenting type of cone, and with a little rough thing on it, and they rub it with a chopstick or a thing like that, and they make a little vibration, and then it creates a line of very fine powder. And then they're wearing bandanas like bandits, but that's not to breathe because the powder is so it could easily be moved by the breath. And then they make they make this exquisite thing with that powder. And so this is a powder mandala, color particle mandala, initiatory mandala. It's amazing, actually, what they do. And they work out from inside. But when they're doing it, supposedly, I mean, the adept ones there's a ritual being performed by the monks around them who are reading it, although they've all memorized this little 120 single-space thing. And they are visualizing the whole mandala. The hologram is around them, the palace. And then certain main architectural lines in the palace, they're imagining that they draw down and they embed it in lines in the two-dimensional thing. You follow me? They flatten the whole thing in a way cosmically into the two-dimensional thing. And then furthermore, they visualize that every tiny grain of the powder contains the whole mandala universe in it. And that's why when they later sweep up the powder and then they entrust it to the nagas, the serpent water beings, the water serpent dragon snake beings in the ocean, but through the rivers, they feel that every grain of that powder has the whole mandala in it. There's like a Samantabhadra thing, like holographic vision of the universe. They completely are into that. You follow me? So that's why that thing, and I had actually a supernormal experience myself in 1965 when I was an idiot monk, before I was an idiot professor, don't worry. I'm not implying anything. But when I was, first time I saw the powder mandala in Dharamsala in 1965, in a line, you know, I had a little privilege in the line because I was a monk, but I went around, and this voice spoke in my Walter Cronkite voice went off, you know, which is the voice of the divine or something, you know. It wasn't my voice. It was like Walter Cronkite. It was to me the ultimate. It always expresses himself. Never as George Burns. George Burns used to play God, you know, but that never convinced me. God wouldn't smoke a cigar like that and behave like that. But Cronkite was like it. So that voice said to me, if human beings can make anything that beautiful, it is possible to attain Buddhahood. Okay, thanks, Walter. So do I have CBS's guarantee of that? Yes, oh great. Something in my unconscious probably. But it was really marvelous. And many of you, how many of you have seen it? One of the ones where the monks make it? We used to have it in our art shows even. We get them to come and make it. Good, I'm glad you have it. It is amazing. It's so vivid. And it has such an energy about it. And then they sweep it up, throw it away, which is amazing. Now, this is the Hankshamalavaraya. You know, the Kala Chakra cosmic mantra, Om Ahum Ho Hankshamalavaraya Humpe, famous 10-syllable mantra. This is the Kala Chakra Yidam, you know, that's what you are. And you are both male and female, by the way, when you are that. This is serious transgender. Because you can be, in your ordinary body, either male or female, doesn't matter, or both. But when you're visualizing yourself as Kala Chakra, you are both the male and the female in the sadhana. Which doesn't mean also not that there are yogas in Kala Chakra where you work with a partner, but when you're vainly visualizing it, you are everyone. And unfortunately, we can't see in this projection because of whatever, that the side deities, but a lot of the main side deities are, you know, surrounding deities are in little cartouches around that thing. That's an old painting. And this is really, I like this one. And this is, you know, I don't like the background on this. Well, I don't want to do that now. But anyway, this is the Great Bliss Wheel, what it's called. You know, there's body wheel, speech wheel, mind wheel, Great Bliss Wheel, and miraculous activity wheel, even outside here. So there are 5 wheels. But this is the innermost wheel, the Great Bliss Wheel. And there you are in the center as Mr. and Mrs. Kala Chakra. She has 8 arms, and she also has 4 faces. And she's golden, her body, golden color. He's black color, but his right leg is red and left leg is white. And then he has the 24 arms, which are red, white, and black. And she has 8 arms, which are all gold. But then there are these 8 goddesses around them called the 8 Shaktis, powers, the 8 energies. And what they are is 8 of the 10 paramitas embodied. You know, dana paramita, shila paramita, generosity, ethicality, tolerance, creativity, concentration, wisdom, art, prayer, power, and knowledge, and rain cloud of the Dharma. And if that's 10, or maybe knowledge is the 10th, then rain cloud of the Dharma is the name of the state. Yeah, I think so. And she and he are. She is 3 beings. She's Vishwamata, which is the same as Kala Chakra, but she also is Prajna Paramita and Jnana Paramita. She's wisdom, transcendence, and the 6th and the 10th paramitas. So these are the other 8, these 8 goddesses around. Each of them has 4 faces and 8 arms, like her. And this is correct because the black ones are in the down side, which is the east side, the direction he faces. And the red is the south, and the white is the north and northeast, and then the yellow and the northwest are the ones above. This is a very vivid. I think in the future I will not use the orange background for these slides. Then this is of course, these are the Kala Chakra chakras, because the Kala chakra system is a tiny bit different in some respects than the Guhya Samaja and the other ones. And it makes more of a fuss about the super brain chakra, which is actually above your head. It's your Ushnisha chakra. And the genital chakra, also having 32 petals, below the navel chakra, where you have 64. The heart chakra still has 8. And then the throat chakra has more. It has 32, actually, like the genital chakra. And the brain chakra only has 24, because it has another chakra on top of it, 5, So there's 6 chakras in the Kala chakra system. There's the same central channel and same right and left channels, which you see are, and then the right and left channel go a little differently at the bottom part. So there, that's all software programming. So, and then the Kala chakra, okay, anyway, so okay, you have creation stage. Okay, now, in that creation stage, just so you realize what it is, which is that we're not pretending that we can necessarily do this. Some of you may have the initiation, you may be working a little bit at it, and that's good to do. Even if you don't really fully know what you're doing, it sort of creates an affinity. When after you die in your next life or something, you'll have that affinity, or maybe some later time in this life. So it's important to sort of keep connected to it, even if you're not that great about it. But it helps to be encouraged to do that, to know what it is. So what it is, and that's why you have to have some initial understanding of emptiness, which means that you understand that you are a work in progress. Because right now, in your sense of identifying yourself as an ordinary person with an ordinary body, you have a model of yourself in your brain, in your central nervous, and brain is in the whole body, actually. So your central nervous system has a model of you in it. And you have 2 arms and 10 fingers, etc. The sense organs that you have, and the limbs and the muscles and all this. And you have a model of yourself as a tree-like thing like that, with these ganglia, these nexi, up and down the central channel, and then branching out into thousands and tens of thousands of nerve channels, and energy canals, and fluid and nerves, and so on. And so what you're doing in the creation stage is you're imagining that you melt all of that down. You let go of that. You become a pure awareness that is not invested automatically and indelibly in the model of yourself in your central nervous system. You then, but you can't sort of think directly of the central nervous system necessarily. So you then think of yourself, if you're doing Kala Chakra, as being a male in union with a female, and you're sort of on both sides of that union. You're both the female and the male. That's already really complicated. Then you have 3 shoulder joints, 3 windpipes, and 3 necks. And the back one somehow just hovers there without a neck. I don't know how, the yellow one in the back. You have these 3 necks, you have 6 shoulders, and 3 on each side. Then you have 6 upper arms, and then you have 12 lower arms, forearms and hands. And they're different colors, etc. You only have 2 legs, and but you actually have 4 legs, because you also are the female. So you're this weird being. You're both of them, and you're very in love with this yourself. The male part of you is in love with the female part of you, and the female part is in love with the male part of you. So you're very like that. But you're not just looking at each other, because each of you has 3 other faces, with 3 eyes in each face, and you're looking in all directions. So you're aware of everything in all directions. Plus this, like the way the chest chakra splits out into this fan of things, and you're holding implements in each of them that symbolize specific mental powers and abilities and things, tools for getting things done. And your body is made of pure time also. So, of course, at first, you have to even memorize all the things that are in the 24 hands. And the colors of the backs of the fingers, thumb and fingers, are different colors, the 5 wisdom colors. And front joints are red, white, and blue, red, white, and black. And the fingernails have different colors. I mean, it's complicated to do that. But if you visualize yourself, as you practice it bit by bit, and of course, it also helps if in your practice of the exoteric, you develop very good stability of mind, where you can concentrate on one thing without wavering quite strongly. Because then you concentrate on feeling like what it feels like to be in such an embodiment. And as you can see, what is the purpose of that? What it will feel like, there's one way of how it would feel externally, in a sense, that you'd be looking in all directions, you'd be sort of aware of everything all around you, and you would therefore be looking upon other beings around you in a mandala palace, although at the first minute you don't deal with that, you just sort of create yourself. And you're looking at all of these other beings, and yet you're feeling you're also them looking at you. You imagine that too, so you are all of them. You give birth to them, kind of, and there's a process in the sadhana where you give birth to them. And then not only that, there's another process in the sadhana where you have all of them in different joints of your body, like the 12 body lotuses, which I showed you in the first powder mandala you saw in the body mandala. They're in your wrists and elbows and shoulders, and hip bone, hip and knee and ankle. So there's 12 complete 30 deity chakras in each of them, you know. And then so you're completely made out of them as well. It's a body mandala thing, what they call a body mandala. So, but anyway, that's more complicated. But when you even just to do that, you can imagine if you had such a body, to sort of wiggle one of your 3 middle red arms, holding, an elephant goad with a noose in the other hand, in the matching red hand. To wiggle that, you have a whole different neural structure inside your chest, it connects to your brain and your central nervous system. So what you're doing is, by imagining that, you're making through using your imagination that way, you're creating a different openness and a greater sensitivity to the subtle patternings of the central nervous system. And you reach the stage in the creation stage where that becomes so strong for you that you really feel that you are that body. Just like right now I feel I'm this with my 2 arms. In that state, you feel you really have that. That's what you are. You feel like that. You feel what it feels like that. Can you imagine that? So you've created a sort of openness, but on the other hand, it's not stuck, because you know that's not absolute, although you could maybe feel like, wow, I'm really Kala Chakra. But you're not stuck in that, because then you can leave the mandala, you can melt that down, and you can come back to being your ordinary self again. So you don't get stuck in some sort of psychotic separate world where you can't come out of it. But apparently it feels really good to be a 24-arm, multicolored, 3-colored person in union with 8-armed, 4-faced, golden person. Hi, Bo, come on in. And to feel that that's what you are, apparently that feels pretty good. Especially because you imagine, of course, being Kala Chakra, you are not doing some ordinary genitally organized sex. Although you're in union, sexual union of a certain, the organs are touching, but what they are doing is they are generating orgasmic energy all up and down the chakra system. So the orgasm is not just happening there in the bottom chakra, it's happening all the way up and down and flows back and forth up and down. And the ultimate place for it, of course, to stay is the heart, actually. And they only show the heart as 8 petals because that's the immediate thing, but actually then it branches to being 24, which is very important, which the chakra samvara is especially very good at. So you have to do that. You have to develop that ability, because then you're going into then when you reach where you really can shift into being in that Kala Chakra universe, and you're the Kala Chakra in the Kala Chakra universe with your self replicated in a clan, kind of a bunch of clans and families, a tribe, which are all you. You feel completely identified with all of them. you know. When you do that, then you begin to do this subtle yoga where you begin to visualize that whole thing in your body everywhere, and then in every atom of your body, and then you begin to go into the perfection stage. You begin to go into this where you start going through the process of death, the process of rebirth, and the process of then re-emanation, and you start going into these things where if you didn't have this openness in the nervous system, you might actually die. And you might completely get freaked out, or you might go nuts, or whatever, you know, get soklung, what they call it, become crazed. And all kinds of terrible things could happen to you. Which is why, you know, now the Nyingma tradition, and that some of the other tantric traditions in ancient India, because the Nyingma thing was, after all, formed at an earlier phase of the Indian tradition, began in the 7th century, and it really got strong in the 8th, 9th century was when the Nyingma tradition sort of had its founding moments. And at that time, there was no Kalachakra present in India, and some of the more elaborate, the whole literature of the commentaries, etc., had not developed not because they didn't exist, actually, and the knowledge wasn't there. The knowledge was there, we argue, and we insist, from Buddha's time, actually. And actually, internally, it was there from other worlds in the past. But in India, and on the planet Earth, it was there from Buddha's time, definitely. And we say, but they kept it genuinely secret for about 1100 years from Buddha's time. They really didn't have text, they really kept it secret. Because, why? Because, you know, the initiation ceremony is like a royal consecration. Now, the kings of the earlier period in Indian civilization, different Indian nations, because there was many nations in India, they might not have appreciated some untouchables and some weird mix of people going out somewhere in a temple and like becoming kings, you know, and having ceremonies that were reserved for them and their Brahmins, you know. It's not just sex or anything. It's the whole idea of the individual feeling, I'm a king, you know. You know, remember Thomas Paine? Common Sense, the American Revolution. Did you ever read that pamphlet, any of you, in your American history book? He has this wonderful thing about how the crown of the king has these gems that represent the consensual will of the people, which are the gems of the love and trust and faith of the people. And what a revolution, what democracy is, where you shatter that crown, and then every being has a piece of one of the gems, you know, which is their vote, you know, their power, their own individual power. A beautiful symbol for democracy that he wrote. So the tantric thing is that. So they had to wait for India to develop really, you know, through the monastic vehicle, through the general Mahayana Bodhisattva vehicle, etc., to develop a stronger appreciation of the female, a less violent thing about the male, and a stronger sense of individuality overall. Where people were, you know, where people were not afraid of feeling really that, you know, I can be king too, you know. You know, there's all those things about the yoga, and even when, of course, India always had that in a way. That's why Buddha chose India, because the Vedist society was established by nomads. The so-called Aryans who came to India were nomads originally. So they had somewhere in the root of their culture this nomadic thing. And nomads tend to be more individualistic than people who live in cities. People who live in agricultural cities, it's a hierarchy. They can know they have to deliver the grain over here, and then somebody processes it, and somebody else does that, and then they buy their shoes, etc. You know, cities developed this kind of thing where people fit into a group. You have castes, you know, you have different identities like that. Whereas the nomad, everybody kind of does everything and they wander around, and they don't really follow the leader quite so much. They can't, because they have to raise their animals somewhere else, you know. Which may have been one of the reasons why Tibetans took so much to it right away. But anyway, because if you look at it like that, from the time Tantra became public in India, more public in India, it was still esoteric, but it was more known. There was a literature, there was going to be a library from the 6th century or so, about 1100 years after Buddha. That's just very shortly after that, it starts to move into Tibet, actually. Interesting. Just thought of that myself. So this is why it's no joke, the Tantra, actually. And this is why the Dalai Lama says, when sometimes 100, 200, 300,000 people come to the Kalachakra, because it's kind of, Tibetan culture has become like a picnic or something. But he says, there might be one or two of us here able to really work on this. I'm not really qualified to give this initiation. You're not really qualified to receive it, but we go through it as a blessing. There's a tradition about it, he said. Someday in future lives, we'll all do it really like yogis, and we'll really know it and understand it. He always says that. I don't know if some of you, if you've been there, if you know that. He invariably says that, which is very good to say. And it's very correct in a way. But of course, he is very qualified to do it, actually, himself. And there may be a few more people than that, indeed. But it's much best, even those who are really going to try to use it, it's good that they think of themselves that way and don't get all, take their vestigial, absolutist habit pattern of self-identity and transfer it onto, now I'm Kalachakra, like, I'm not going to wash the dishes. How can I wash dishes with my 24 arms? I might break them all. Ridiculous. But I know some people who behave like that. I do. So, okay. So, and there's a focus on this one. And I just love it, I must say. I do love the palette, the Kalachakra palette. This is where it shows all the different things in the hands, There are things, when you start to learn it, you use things like that. Okay, any question? Any questions? Anybody have any questions? Yes?
Is an empowerment required to do that kind of experiential exercise that you're describing?
Yes, it does. And that's why people keep taking it again and again, because you get lost in it, actually, a little bit. The only one I know who had a real glimpse of it was my wife. She's always, I'm so jealous, but I can't help it. But anyway, it's good that I am. It's good that she's way beyond me. I can tell from her description she had that she really had a glimpse of it all. And it is really amazing. You get reborn again and again in the initiation. You dissolve, then you arise in a Buddha body, then you float over and you go into the mouth of the Kalachakra, and then you're born from the womb of the female part of the Kalachakra, and then you're placed in the mandala, and then this and that, the deities come, the Shaktis come, and they fix your turban, and they put your hat on, and do all this kind of stuff. And you can't, almost impossible to follow it, unless you really know all the iconography, and so once you're an adept, then you get him. Actually, I don't like the word empowerment also, by the way. I don't like that word. People will only think that this tantric thing, somehow there's some power coming to you. It's like you're gassing up at the, at the pump, it's like in-flight refueling, from the Lama, but that's not correct. The Wangkurwa, the word that is translated Wangkurwa in Tibetan, which means conferral. Wang by itself can mean power, but it also is short for Wangbo, which means a prince. So conferral of princedom. And the Sanskrit word is abhisheka, which means an anointment. So it's actually like a coronation ceremony. Now, when you coronate a crown prince, by sort of place, they are then eventually can become a king. But they didn't get an extra power by being coronated. They just occupied a certain position, in a way, a position of a potential power, but they don't get power in the initiation. They get anointed, And so, because of the ambiguity in Tibetan, if you leave out the suffix particle, Wangpo, which means a prince, Indra, it's a translation of Indra, and this means the conferral of the princedom on a prince, which you do by anointing the prince in a coronation ceremony. Right, so when the way that some Tibetans have translated it, and Tibetan scholars translate it, empowerment, it gives people the wrong idea that I got to go get more initiations because I'm getting more power every initiation I get.